All right, so this chapter 6 is going to be looking at where cities develop and kind of the types of goods and services that are generated in cities. And so why do we have big cities and small cities? And we're going to use the model of monopolistic competition mostly to make the arguments for it. So perfect competition had 3 characteristics. Perfect competition. What was that? Any one of them. Homogeneous goods. So they were identical goods. Good.
Entry into the market is easy.
Easy entry, exit. So free entry and exit. Homogeneous goods. And then lastly, free entry, exit.
So something about substitutions.
Well, the substitutes thing really comes up with the homogeneous goods. There's perfect substitutes. How many sellers do we got? Just a few of them? A whole bunch of them. Whole bunch of them. Drop of water in the bucket. So we've got number of producers. Fill this bucket up to here. Put a drop of water in an eyedropper. Will you see the water level rise? No. So every producer is a drop of water in the bucket. In other words, their production is relatively small to the overall market production. Okay, so that's perfect competition. Monopolistic competition brings in a lot more realistic assumptions. So again, we have no barriers to entry. What's an example of a barrier to entry? The government, through what? Give me a little bit more. You're right. There's some government patents. So patents on something can be a government.
Regulation.
Some sort of regulation. Some sort of maybe quota or subsidy or some sort of mother may I, like you have to go get permission from the government because they're, depending on what mood they are or how much money you put underneath the table to them. That doesn't happen in the United States for the most part, but in other countries that can be fairly common. Do you have to bribe your way to get a business started, right? Money under the table. So all of that stuff can be potential barriers to entry. And so in monopolistic competition, those barriers are relatively small. Another thing that can be a barrier to entry is high costs of entry. So it's really expensive to start up a business because of the machinery or specialized equipment or other things. So for the most part, we don't have barriers like that for companies to get started in monopolistic competition. Okay, product differentiation. So give me some industries that we have differentiated products.
Bowling balls.
Bowling balls, okay?
Chips.
Chips. Tennis rackets. So keep going. Let's get at least 20 more. Shoes, phones.
Chicken.
Chicken.
Table.
Soda. Clothing.
Beer.
Beer. Pizza. Projectors. Chicken wings. Hats.
Shirts.
Pencils. Alcohol.
Shirts.
Computers. Books. Church.
Shirts.
Oh, sure. Church can be differentiated too, actually, but yes. Shirts. Subscriptions, right? So basically, most of the stuff that we enjoy, was the whole point of that, is that competition causes people to want to be slightly different from their other ones, claiming that it's really different, you got to try my product, but at the end of the day, there's a decent degree of substitutability between the competing products, right? So they're not perfect substitutes like identical products would be, like with perfect competition, homogeneous products are really perfect substitutes. Doesn't matter totally which one you get or not, but rather each one is slightly differentiated. Some of them might be bundled together. So the service that you get at a particular fast food restaurant might be different. Maybe they bring the food out to you rather than you having to go to the counter or something like that. So there could be differences in the bundling of a product. All right, so all of that stuff is monopolistic competition. All right, so what does that mean in terms of graphs and formulas? So if we have a competitive market, one where there's not really any barriers to entry at all, and there's quite a few existing competitors, what do we expect the profit to be? Or maybe another way to put this is, what do we expect the price to be in the long run?
It'd be just above the level of production, the cost of production.
Just above the cost of production. Wrong!
No,
So close though. You are really on the right. You're on the right. You're on the absolute right line of thinking. I just had to say you're wrong. I want to toughen you up and make you stronger.
Just below your
Just below your competitor's price. No, because then your competitor will lower their
would
price.
it be the cost of production?
Set by the market. Something close to Daniel
Would
wasn't
it be
too
the
far off.
cost of production?
Equals the cost of production. What type of cost? Because I said the
The
price.
fixed cost.
I said the price.
Fixed cost.
Variable, fixed, no, marginal, no. Average, total cost, right. So average total cost is a combination of average fixed cost and average variable cost, right? So if we kind of go back through our principles of micro stuff, let's kind of even give a full rundown here. So profits equal total revenue minus total cost. We can think of price times quantity minus average total cost times quantity, which then would be the difference between average total cost times quantity. Whew! So we expect in a competitive market, in the long run, this equation equals 0, because price will equal average total cost. Well, that's depressing. Does that mean we can't have people making money? Do we expect all the entrepreneurs or business owners to stay in an industry where they have 0 money? That doesn't sound sustainable. So what's different than econ class versus accounting class? Rating.
Opportunity cost.
Opportunity cost. Thank you. Is it international that I went through this long lecture again? So it's always worthwhile giving another one. So we include opportunity cost in the calculation of total cost. So when this equation equals 0 in the long run, so our prediction is that this is economic profit. We usually don't say that word, but economic profit versus accounting profit. Economic profit equals 0 in the long run. If we include opportunity cost as part of our calculation of total cost, then this profit is a normal profit, right? It's still a positive accounting profit. So kind of the key point is that your accounting profit is greater than 0. But normal, quote unquote, a normal profit is being earned. It's not an abnormal, abnormal profit in the sense that, oh my gosh, that industry, they're just making money hand over fist. Or rather, in that industry, you can probably expect to earn 10% rate of return on your money. There's a bunch of companies in there, and if you average them out on average, some do better than others. Some people do 12%, some people do 8%, but on average, they tend to earn about a 10% rate of return. Do you think you want to put your money in that type of investment, right? You're just going to earn a normal profit. You expect to earn a normal accounting profit. If you give up some of your hard-earned money and put it into that, you don't have maybe other alternatives of similar risk. It's just a normal profit. Kind of, I don't want to necessarily call it boring because it's still got some risk associated with it, but otherwise you don't expect there to be abnormally high profits, just normal profits. Okay, so that's an important underlying assumption here in a competitive market, is that we would expect a normal profit to be earned by the existing firms. Okay, questions on that at all? So then that total cost is equal to your total fixed cost plus your total variable cost. Costs that vary with, why do we call them variable cost again? What do they vary with? Quantity. So as I produce more product, those types of costs go up. But other types of costs, like my rent, are independent of how many units I sell. If I sell 500 units or if I sell 5,000 units, my rent to my landlord is still $2,500 a month. He doesn't care how much I sell, right? So some costs are fixed with quantity, some costs are variable with quantity. So then it's convenient to, I guess I'll use a little Q here since that's the way the author has it. If I divide and I calculate my average total cost So average total cost, what I do to one side of the equation, I got to do the other side. And so I get my average fixed cost plus my average variable cost. This is pretty much the way I present it in principles class, right? So we got the average variable, average fixed, get the average total. And so now you guys have to adapt a little bit. We got the same concepts going on, but maybe some different notation. So what is this sucker right here?
That's your total.
That's our total cost, right? So cost, total cost of production, big C, is a function of quantity. What's this? Fixed cost. And then what's this? Variable cost. Why do you know that that's variable cost? Because it's got the Q in it. Good. So my marginal cost here is assumed to be constant, which you'll see in the textbook a lot is a simplifying assumption. We've used it before. So it just says every unit can be produced at a constant rate, $5 per unit or something, which is a simplifying assumption. Normally that's upward sloping. That's the J-shaped marginal cost curve is what we expect our cost curves to look like. Is a picture like this, where we've got the law of diminishing returns creating the law of increasing costs at the margin. But as a simplifying assumption, they've just got this fixed factor. Marginal costs are assumed to be constant at some amount. Okay, so this is average cost. And so all I did is divide this by Q. Of course, I get C. Divide this by Q. And now we start to see the effects of economies of scale. So my startup cost, as they depicted, the setup cost of so I'm going to open up a restaurant. It's going to run me $100,000 of equipment and building and all the stuff to get started. My startup cost, and then how much does that factor into my average? Well, it depends on how much you make, right? So that factor is going down, and that's really the idea of economies of scale, which is actually a long-run concept, but nonetheless, the more quantity I produce, my average costs are falling. So if I have a high K, like with 1 unit, there's my K. K divided by a big Q is a lot smaller. So my average costs are falling. Okay, good on that so far. All right, so I think I'm going to go to the straightforward here rather than show you on. I think you guys need some good notes for this one. We'll go to the board for the graph. All right, well, I enjoy telling my McDonald's story that I'll kind of rehash a little bit for you. So old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O, and so when he first entered the market, he was the only show in town. He had a monopoly, right? So this is the quantity of, fast food hamburgers. They didn't exist before these two farmers, the McDonald brothers, opened up the first McDonald's. So now they have a monopoly in the production of hamburgers. So they face the downward sloping demand curve is the market demand for these fast food yummy hamburgers. And when the demand curve is downward sloping, what does it mean? What does old McDonald have to do to sell more hamburgers? Lower the price. So old McDonald has to lower the price to sell more burgers. That's the law of demand. They're the only show in town. So if they lower the price, what's going to be true about the revenue generated by each additional burger?
Less.
It's less. So less. So if I'm currently selling $5 for a burger, let's just pick a number out here. So $5, and I'm selling, I guess, 100 hamburgers. If I drop my price to 4, let's say I kick that up to 120. So that's nice. But what is the revenue generated by the additional burgers? So what is the marginal revenue from that price change? So what is the marginal revenue of a change in price from 5 to 4 using those numbers? 20 hamburgers. So I get 20 hamburgers as the change in quantity, I'll give you that.
A 20th of.
So the change in quantity equals 20, 120 minus 100.
So it's 20, it'd be 20 cents.
20 cents. Well, let's see, what's the formula for marginal revenue? Marginal revenue equals price times quantity. No, that's total revenue. So total revenue is price times quantity. What's the marginal revenue?
Marginal price of the quantity?
Nope, no cost. We don't have any cost yet. The marginal revenue.
Price over quantity?
Price over quantity, no. So instead of trying to go back to your Rolodex of formulas, if I'm looking at marginal, what word do we use for marginal? Like if I was to say another word instead of marginal, what would I be looking at?
Difference?
The difference or the additional revenue? So I'm kind of asking, what's the additional revenue I earn when I drop my price from 5 to 4? What's the additional revenue I earn? So now think about how that would translate into the formula. There's total revenue, we already did that one, right?
Total revenue divided by the change in quantity.
Total revenue divided by the change in quantity? No. Not quite. Total revenue by the change in quantity. It's close, that's why I wrote it on the board. Missing an important thing. We got the change in quantity. Change in price? No.
Oh, divide that again.
How much money am I making when I have a price of 5? How much revenue, rather? 500. Oh, that's easy. Okay. And how much money am I making now that I dropped my price to 4? 480. And so marginal revenue is the additional revenue that I'm getting from the price change. So how much additional revenue am I earning? Minus 20, right? So this is, so what's missing off here? Okay, the change. The little triangle is missing. There you go. How's that? The change in total revenue from the change in quantity. All right, so that's marginal revenue. What is the marginal revenue of this? So now if we do it, we've got our 500, or our new number. Our new number is 480 minus our old number of 500 divided by the change in quantity of 20. So what's my marginal revenue?
-1.
-1. -$1. So the revenue generated by an extra hamburger is a -$. Is that a good hamburger to make? Probably not. What happened to my cost? Somebody brought up marginal cost. If I produce more hamburgers, what happened to my costs? They went up, and then my revenues for those additional burgers actually went down. So now what's really weird is how much did I sell the 113th burger for? How much did I actually sell it for? Like when I sold it that day, how much did I get for the 113th burger?
$4.
$4. But wait a second, I thought we just lost, we lost money. There's no way I could have sold it for $4 and actually lost money on it, could I? What's going on here?
Is it factoring opportunity costs?
We're really just focusing in on revenue. Fixed costs? Nope, we don't have any costs. Just looking at the revenue, right? I didn't put any cost curves in here. All I said was, hey, at $5 we're selling 100 hamburgers, let's drop the price. Do businesses do that once in a while?
Yeah.
Yeah, did they sell more hamburgers?
Yes.
Sure. They sold 120, that sounds like a good idea. But if I do the calculation, what was the revenue generated by each additional burger on average when I incrementally added that many? -1? I lost $1 per burger, but yet I sold it for 4? What an interesting paradox we have. What's creating that? It's important to see this part. There's a good solid reason. Most are going to say, oh, well, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, the costs are $5.
No cost. Get cost out of your brain.
So you're making $1 less per burger you sell, right?
Yes, here.
So you sold it for $3.
Well, I sold them for 4, though. The burger sold for 4. Where's this missing money coming from? I was selling what for 5? You're on to something, Olivia. I was selling what for 5? How many?
100.
100 of them. 100 of them were going for $5. When I dropped the price, could I just drop the price for those extra 20? No.
You need more.
I had to drop the price for the previous 100 also. So how much did I lose on the previous 100? $100, $1 each. It cost me $100 in lost revenue on the previous ones I was making in order to sell the extra 20. So it's like the extra 20 brought me in $4 each, so that's $80. For the extra 20 brought me in $80 plus 80, smiley face. But where's my green? I need to increase the impact here. I lost $1 on each of the previous 100, unhappy face. Unhappy face outweighs the smiley face by how much?
$20.
$20. And then I produced 20. So on average, that's -1 unhappy faces. Questions? Yes.
So would it be smart to produce the first 100 at $5 and then do some sort of sale to produce the other additional 20 at $4?
That would be great if you can do it. In fact, it's a technique that's used very often. What do we call it? Buy one, get one is a version of it. General name for when we
Discount.
sell basically the same product at different prices to different people. Price discrimination. So if we can sell these extra to poor college students who can't afford $5, and I can have them reveal their student ID, and so the extra 20 are just the poor college students that weren't buying them anyway, and I have the rich people paying $5, and I got the poor college kids paying $4, now we're talking.
So what's the example of that one right now?
Movie tickets.
Yeah, come up with one. What do you think?
Senior
Movie
discount.
tickets, student discount? Apple Music?
Senior discount.
Student discount on software, Microsoft Word and Excel and stuff. We got the student edition, that sort of stuff.
Military
Amazon Prime,
discount.
military discount, all kinds. They're all over. Once you start looking at that. So that's the broader topic of price discrimination, which we're not allowing in this chapter so far. So one of our assumptions, what we're really doing here is called the single price monopolist. Okay, so where do we go from there? That means, I think I'll leave that picture like it is. So here's the picture that you guys had from principles class. If you draw a demand curve and have it touch the vertical and horizontal axis, there's a little trick here. If you bisect where the demand curve intersects the horizontal axis, take the midpoint. That is where the marginal revenue curve comes down. And the marginal revenue curve, you won't see this in your textbook, but it does come negative. We just showed it, right? So the marginal revenue curve can go negative, but typically we just showed this part of the graph because you'd kind of be dumb to be doing what we just did here and actually spending more money and not bringing in as much money. That would be a dumb thing to do. So a business is always going to operate up here. Okay, so then again, following the textbook, instead of giving you a J-shaped marginal cost curve, if indeed marginal costs are assumed to be constant, we get a marginal cost curve that looks like this, which is at the way that formula said was C. What was that level C? And now the ever important question, how does a firm maximize profits? The holy grail of business that every business wants to know, that every econ student absolutely needs to know. Luke. Okay, produce the quantity. So for our monopolist here, produce the quantity, this one, where the revenue generated by the last hamburger made is equal to the cost of the last hamburger made. If you produce less than that, then that's saying you could make some money on an extra hamburger and it costs you less. Should you do that hamburger? Yes. If you go past it, the cost of an additional hamburger is greater than the revenue. That would be a dumb thing to do. So the profit maximizing quantity is where the marginal cost of the last hamburger is equal to the revenue generated by it. So that would be the quantity of hamburgers. And then you're going to charge the highest price people are willing and able to pay, which is given by the demand curve. And so that's our picture for monopoly. All right, we will pick up there on Wednesday.